Welcome to day 54 of the Gospel of John Book Club. And in today's reading, I pledge allegiance to Caesar.
So today's reading comes from John 19, verses 1 to 16. Then Pilate had Jesus flogged with a lead-tipped whip. The soldiers wove a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put a purple robe on him. "Hail, King of the Jews!" they mocked as they slapped him across the face. Pilate went outside again and said to the people, "I am going to bring him out to you now, but understand clearly that I find him not guilty." Then Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, and Pilate said, "Look, here is the man." When they saw him, the leading priests and temple guards began shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" "Take him yourselves and crucify him," Pilate said. "I find him not guilty." The Jewish leaders replied, "By our law, he ought to die because he called himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was more frightened than ever. He took Jesus back into the headquarters again and asked him, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave no answer. "Why don't you talk to me?" Pilate demanded. "Don't you realize that I have the power to release you or crucify you?" Then Jesus said, "You would have no power over me at all unless it were given to you from above. So the one who handed me over to you has the greater sin." Then Pilate tried to release him, but the Jewish leaders shouted, "If you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who declares himself a king is a rebel against Caesar." When they said this, Pilate brought Jesus out to them again. Then Pilate sat down on the judgment seat on the platform that is called the stone pavement, in Hebrew, Gabbatha. It was now about noon on the day of preparation for the Passover, and Pilate said to the people, "Look, here is your king." "Away with him," they yelled. "Away with him! Crucify him!" "What? Crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar." The leading priests shouted back. Then Pilate turned Jesus over to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus away.
Yeah, so it's going down. I mean, yesterday we were just talking about this, how, Pilate was just like, kind of like, okay, I'm in the middle of this thing. I don't want responsibility for what's happening. I'll give him back to you. You tell me what to do, And I think that was a pretty cowardly way for a governor that one of the, he's in charge here. He has the opportunity to kind of take a stand, and he doesn't, But then it's so funny because he sends Jesus, basically says, "Okay, whatever you want me to do with them, that's what we'll do." And then they essentially say, "Listen, according to our law, he ought to die. He ought to die. He's supposed to be executed." And Pilate's like, "Okay, let me take him back in. Let me see. Let me kind of figure this out a little bit more." And then they start to pressure him, and they're basically like, "Listen, like, Caesar's really in charge here. You're just like one of his underlings, and if you don't do what we're calling you to do now, we're going to take this up with Caesar, because if you were really, on the side of Caesar, and then you would understand, you would do what we asked." And that's so true. He's now really facing like, okay, there's going to be there may be some repercussions depending on how I go forth with this thing. And I feel for him a little bit. He didn't ask for any of this,
and I think Jesus did too. I think Jesus gives him permission in a sense. And it removes any guilt that he would feel from it. Yeah. Jesus is like, "Listen, it's not your fault. The one who handed me over to you, this is on them. Yeah. It's not on you."
Well, this is. Well, I don't think he really says it's not on them, because he says they have the greater sin.
Yeah, you're sinning. That's messed up.
Like, what you're doing is messed up.
It's messed up. But I get it. Like, so, and I think Jesus, Jesus's character, his identity, I think Pilate is really starting to sense that there's something different about Jesus. Yeah. And then when they said he says he's the Son of God, he has fear, like, that's what it is.
That's what it is.
It's this dude is different.
Like, hold on. let me talk to him one more time.
Let's bring him back in. Who are you? Like, this is, I don't want
the more beautiful thing is Jesus doesn't even answer.
Jesus
is like
this, like, whatever. And then I'm imagining, it seems as if something the Jews may have been becoming a little unruly for Pilate, because whatever is happening, it doesn't seem like this is the fact that they even had Barabbas when we read the last time. Barabbas, he's a revolutionary. So it seems like there's some kind of rebellion or something that's happening, that the Romans are starting to have some issues controlling the Jews, and now this.
But here's the it's funny that you say that, because yes, that's essentially what's happening. But the crazy part about it is, even in their positioning with the Roman government, they don't like being under Roman authority. But they hate Jesus so much that they're like, we have no king but Caesar. Like, all of a sudden, like Caesar's the hero?
I know. Aren't you trying to lead a rebellion? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Now all of a sudden it's like you're with Caesar just because they want what they want.
They hate Jesus.
That's crazy.
And it's, but I love what Jesus had said. He said, if the world hates me, he didn't say it today, but if the world hates me, it hates you. For us who are carrying on the mission of Jesus, if the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. And we see the hatred right here playing before our eyes, and it's it's kind of sad to see, but there's beauty in it all. There's beauty in it all, that Jesus willingly went through this torture, this embarrassment, this punishment, the insults, all of it for us.
And bringing glory to God throughout the entire situation, just showing a grace and a dignity. Even with the Roman soldiers, like, really, you had nothing better to do than to put crowns of thorns together? Like, really? It's just...
Now, let me just kind of really just talk a little bit about the flogging. So the passage actually started with him getting whipped, because so Caesar, Pilate's like, okay, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna just whip him, and then we. And then
I imagine he is parading Jesus out to show, like, well, I punished him. I'm guessing Jesus must have looked pretty bad.
Oh, absolutely.
To bring him out.
Let's see. So the flogging was, usually the upper body's bare, and the hands are tied to a pillar. Okay, so imagine your hands being tied around a pillar, a pole, and your shirt being removed, and then you're getting whipped with a 3-prong whip. And in the prongs of those whips are lead pieces of lead in the prongs. And so you're getting whipped with this metal thing in your upper body, your bare skin. It has to be painful and embarrassing even at that. And then for them to say, oh, like they're kind of mocking, the fact that he's announcing proclaiming his kingship. And they're like, oh, you're a king. Hey, let's give you a crown then. Where's your crown? Here's your crown. And it's a crown of thorns of all things. Just to add to the punishment and the embarrassment even. He gets a crown of thorns, So that's got to be pretty painful. Can you imagine that being on your head? Like, just kind of poking you?
But it's still a crown.
I think we forget that part, how painful, like it's...
It seems pretty symbolic.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a sense, I think that even in their depravity, that, like... They're still like, you're a king of Jews, whether it's a mockery or not, or whatever the case is. It's like, I just feel like how Jesus is handling all this and being accused. He didn't do anything. He knows it's a crappy trial. He knows that they're just out to get him and so forth. And he's just still handling this with dignity. And I think it's hard just we're going through this time of 60 days. And we've been reading, getting to know Jesus and who he is and what his heart is, and he cares about people and so forth, and to see that this is happening to him now, and he's signing up for it. Just so I, reading this story now, and can have this freedom to have the relationship with God. I think it puts things into perspective.
It really does. So I want to leave with one parting thought. So the Jews are pledging their allegiance to Rome, right? Instead of God. Who are you? What entity, what behavior, what attitude have you pledged your allegiance to over God? Because I think we all kind of have a little bit of that type of mindset that we see in the Jewish people, where, God calls us one way and we pledge our allegiance to America. And I'm not saying anything in terms of necessarily the flag, but we pledge our allegiance to our political party, or we pledge our allegiance to some type of movement. We pledge there's so many things that are out there, and we sign up for them. And I'm not saying that signing up for different things is bad or good, right? I'm not condoning it, and I'm not denouncing.
Yeah.
But I am saying anything that we put over God's standard or God's truth, and sometimes our political views come in conflict with God's truth. And so what do we do then? And so I think it's essential for us to really spend some time challenging ourselves and say, okay, are there any entities that I've pledged allegiance to that don't line up with God? Or when I do see some conflict, where does my allegiance lie? Does it lie with this entity, or does it lie with God? Are there different behaviors? Maybe I've gotten into some habits or certain things that, I know there's we're living in 2020, and smoking marijuana has become legal in many states now. And for some people, it's like, well, it's the law, right? And, at the same time, where does that lie? Like when you read God's truth, and God's truth is about us not being intoxicated by any substance. And, the word of God is clear that we shouldn't be intoxicated by anything, but rather filled with the Spirit of God. Where do you lie when you're challenged with that? Because the world says it's okay. The world says a lot of things is okay. The government says there are a lot of things that are okay.
The crowd is really riled up here. And, they're going with the majority on this one. And it's very clear that this is the wrong thing to do. So I think it's right where you're aligning yourself with a certain view or a group or something. And sometimes it's difficult to see beyond, beyond the views of what's happening. To even clearly say, no, this is not right. This is clearly against what Jesus would have us doing. Yeah. And so I think it's...
And knowing that it's okay to pull back and say, okay, you know what? I don't align on these things.
Yeah. It's okay to say I don't align on this thing. And in this case, Pilate is afraid to do that because he's afraid to be against the majority. Yeah. He's afraid to lose his positioning. He's afraid to be on the end of that mob who is like, no, crucify him. It's like, do you hear what you're saying? Yeah. So. Yeah. So. It's tough.
Think about it, and we'll see you tomorrow.